you took my Benny? Then one of the guests gets taken by the dregs. So all the survivors, literally all the survivors, there's 11 survivors, which doesn't sound a lot for the spa, but for characters in this story, there is a lot of characters. Not sure why some of them couldn't have stayed behind at the spa, just a couple of them, and waited for them, and may not could have gone after the character who was kidnapped, Benny. But they all go, and they soon find themselves in it's Orphan 55. It's an orphan planet. Yet these creatures somehow survived some sort of catastrophe that caused the planet to be an orphan planet. And the holiday spa is there in case that this planet can be terraformed to be so people could live there again. Anyway, so they get attacked by the dregs, and it's revealed that Benny was captured by the dregs, and they've been having fun with him, which doesn't make an awful lot of sense. These creatures don't really enjoy anything. They don't really have emotion, but yet they seem to be having fun when tormenting Benny for some reason. So the characters then, well, apart from some who die, with little fanfare, I like that, go in under some tunnels and try to get back to Tranquility Spa, and then there's just idea after idea after idea, plot twist after plot twist after plot twist from that. Because basically what's happening is that there's this one of our characters, is it Bella? She basically, it turns out she's the daughter of one of the security people from Tranquility Spa, Kane, not to be confused with the villain from Dragonfire of the same name. I actually prefer Kane in this story, to be honest. Much better character, flawed, but still got some decency in her. But anyway, it turns out that Bella is the disgruntled daughter of Kane, who's been left behind. Whilst Kane's the workaholic mother who seems just not really that much care. Well, does care, but doesn't seem to begin with. But it turns out that Bella is trying to sabotage all her mother's done because she feels disappointed, disgruntled. I'm not sure. She just hates her mum, and because she wasn't there, and so she tries to bring down everything she's built, which more or less causes the dregs to enter Tranquility Spa and all the viruses happening. And then, just as they're escaping, she balls out a gun on her and just pretty much flat out tells them, That's not how you do an explanation. That's not how it's handled. Good grief. And if that wasn't enough parent-child family drama in the story, you've also got James Buckley from The Inbetweeners as a guest character, and his son, played by the boy who played Roger in His Dark Materials, and they've got a bit of a family drama going on. And at one point, Roger leaves the safety of the cupboard on Tranquility Spa when they get back up to the spa where they're all hiding from the dregs and planning the next move. He goes out, storms out after a slight argument with his dad, storms out, and then he puts himself in the danger of the dregs just because he was in a bad mood. He went off for a strop. Waste of bloody time. It's really unnecessary. You could even have lost those two characters and you wouldn't have lost anything, to be honest. And on top of that, it turns out Orphan 55 is Earth. And lots of problems that scientists and people nowadays are warning about, that lots of people, especially politicians, are ignoring. Well, basically what the scientists and clever people are saying are apparently come true. And the story does get very preachy towards the end, especially at the very end with the final message about the human race coming together to prevent Earth from ending up like how it is in Orphan 55. And the dregs are humans who have mutated into these creatures. Interesting idea that they do have is that they breathe CO2 in and release oxygen. The idea itself of this being Earth is actually pretty interesting. And the final message, whilst preachy, does ring home pretty true. It's just that it's stuck within lots of other ideas. I mean, this is Ed Heim who wrote this story, and he's done something like this before where he's done a story where you think it's one thing, and then it turns itself on its head with a twist a third to halfway through into the story. Like, the other one, the story he did before was It Takes You Away, where you thought it was a horror story, and then it turned out there was no monster in the woods, and instead you travelled from one dimension to another via this funny middle ground world where Ribbons, played by Kevin Eldon, lived. I personally wasn't a big fan of that story, and the complete change in story was one of those reasons. But I think, on reflection, that one worked better as it was a bit more built up, and the payoff was a bit better. Here, there isn't really a huge build-up to the outside world or the themes that it would play on later on. It starts off looking like it's Tranquility Spa, then it's revealed that it's on Orphan 55, and we go exploring, and then it turns out it's all Earth and the whole global warming stuff, and etc., etc. And it feels like it could have been built up a bit more. Maybe if they flat out said it was Earth to begin with, Orphan 55 was Earth, as opposed to this is an orphan planet that turns out to be Earth. Or maybe if they don't know it was Earth to begin with, maybe they just think Earth is heading in a similar direction. Maybe it's a warning like that. It just feels it could have been better. It could have been better handled. Could have been built up more. On top of that, like I said, you've got all of these other subplots that are just getting in the way and not really having much time. And there's, like I said, loads of characters that just don't get much to do. Hyphen with a 3. For example, she's there, she's quite nice, she's quite fun, and then she's killed off with little fanfare when trying to escape the truck. Similarly, the other security guy working with Kane gets killed off screen with no care. The characters of Benny and Wilma, it looks like something's going to be set up between them, with Benny trying to propose to Wilma, the older people, and they spent their lives together, so it looks like a nice relationship being built up between the two, and then that just gets completely chucked away after one scene, apart from the Benny 2 questions. Not to mention, Wilma is extremely annoying when she's just crying about Benny, and not crying like, but like, what about Benny? Benny! I swear to God, there's about 20 to 25 times. I actually watched the video count on Twitter. It was like they said it was about 20 to 25 times she screamed out. About 22 or 23 to be precise. I'm not completely certain, but about that many. God, the character didn't even contribute that much. Vilma, Benny, didn't either. I think most of the comedy was coming from them and James Buckby. Um, I will say Vilma did sacrifice herself so that the others could move along, but there wasn't really that much stakes with the character. I wasn't really getting to love her. I wasn't really getting to care about them that much because their character development wasn't really that well done well, and Wilma was just being a bit annoying. She's likable, but I can't really get attached to her. Same for Benny. And that's the same for most of these characters. I just can't really get attached to them because their characters, too many of them, and their characters aren't really that written that well. And when they're written out, they're given little care, apart from maybe Kane and Bella at the end. But apart from that, not really. And our companions don't really seem to be doing a huge amount after leaving Tranquility Spa. We got some funny bits with Graham, and there's some nice bits with him and Ryan. Yasmin hangs around with Vilma and looks after her, and there is a great bit when Vilma does die, Yasmin's face, Jesus Christ, Mandip Gill was fantastic in that scene with that expression that probably encapsulates how the character feels at the time. So high praise for Mandip Gill in that moment. And Jodie Whittaker continues to be great as the Doctor. I do have a issue with the Doctor and the oxygen tank bit at one moment when she's running out of oxygen. I was thinking, what about the respiratory bypass system thing? Which, looked at an article yesterday, and they questioned it as well. In both the classic and revived eras, the Doctor has used a respiratory bypass system so they continue to breathe in oxygen and no oxygen areas. So the Doctor really should have been able to bypass her the oxygen through her respiratory system until she got the thing topped up by the creature. Not to mention the ending where Bella and Kane are left by the dregs and the Doctor to the dregs, and the Doctor and Fam go back to the TARDIS, and they're just like, oh, they'll be fine. How are they going to be fine? And yet you're in the TARDIS. You can go back and save them. Or maybe they got to the teleport. I don't know. Maybe they got to the teleport. But if not, then you've got a TARDIS. You're in the TARDIS. In the final scene. No, they feel more like necessary to give their final speech instead of go and save 2 lives who just about earn the right to still live. I mean, they're not the best people in the world, but the ending at least says they could have been saved, at least, and start afresh. No. This episode is all over the map in its story writing. There's too many ideas, too many characters, too much it wants to do. It needed to cut a few characters out. It needed to drop a few ideas. It just needed to focus on it being the Tranquility Spa setup on this orphan planet, which turns out to be Earth. And these dregs are former humans, and the characters have to find a way to survive these creatures. I think it's a bit of a tight. I think there's too many ideas, and it does spoil the story. Performance-wise, I think the cast do a pretty good job, but the characters, like I said, aren't particularly well written. And on the first reading, these were characters I just couldn't get into, for the most part. Because there just wasn't that much interesting stuff with them. Some of the weakest written characters of recent episodes. I also think the dregs are creatures. I think they're just dare to be generic, brainless creatures that kill people, and the design isn't really that scary. It just looks like a mix of an alien and a predator from the Alien and Predator film series. With similarities to the Hoyts from Love and Monsters, which is a Series 2 episode. And they also popped up in Pandora Opens in Series 5. But yeah, they're not that scary. They're not that threatening, to be honest. I am happy that Spencer Wilding, who played the Minotaur in the God Complex, and Skaldak in Cold War, the physical one, physical Skaldak, comes back as the leader dreg. But still, these creatures aren't that amazing. And the CG does look very fake. The costume looks fine as far as the creature design goes, but the CG on the creatures, or CG of lots of creatures together, is a bit weak. And I also would have liked to have more from the Tranquility Spa stuff. I think we didn't have enough time exploring it before we moved on with the next part of our story. At least it takes you away. We had good amount of time at the cabin before we entered the alternative dimension, because there wasn't a huge amount there, but there was at least time to explore what was there. But here we could have had a little bit more exploration, but no, we've got to get on with this big plot, and it feels like the Dreg attack happening this early in the episode was a bit too soon. More so the fact that they're aware that these Dregs are coming in pretty early on is a bit too soon. On the whole, I think Orphan 55 is an S story. I think it's got some good stuff in there, but there's so much in there that it kind of spoils the story, and because of that, it also lets some other elements down. So, like, too many ideas, not enough time for characters to develop or to follow through on their ideas. And it's also not really that scary either. The way these Dregs are kind of filmed and edited in a way that you've got occasional shots, but from slightly different angles, very slightly, like one here, one there. It's just like it's slowly turning around. And they're just editing every other couple seconds between back and forth, and the fact that you don't really see much of the Dregs to start with. That would build tension, but the way it's edited in just looks hokey, and then you get better shots of what they look like. Why don't you just slowly build up the reveal? Why don't you slowly build up the reveal instead of having stupid editing? And stupid camera work. It's just a bit awkward. It's not scary and it's not creative. It looks lazy. So yeah, that's a shame. Orphan 55 has quite a few good ideas, but it's let down by having too many ideas, not enough time to develop those ideas, not too many characters to focus on, and not giving them enough personality or stuff to do. Some questionable camera and editing works when focusing on the monsters earlier on. And it just feels like it's a muddled story. There's just so much there that it's a bit muddled and all over the place, and it can't really focus on stuff. And the final message is very preachy. I'm not going to hold out too much against it. It's just that it is something they just do feel like they have to, instead of going back and saving some characters who could have been saved, they feel like we have to stop for a minute to give the audience, to directly tell the audience this message. And the final shot of the Doctor going, "Or," and then we cut to one of the Dregs roaring. Yeah, I don't like how that just ended. Not so much the speech and stuff, just like I don't like how it just cut to that Dreg creature roaring and just ending there. It just feels like an unnatural ending. So on the whole, Orphan 55 is Orphan 55 could be my least favourite story of the Jodie Whittaker's era so far, topping the Tsuranga Conundrum. At least the Tsuranga Conundrum had some really good ideas that it tried to play about with, and didn't have too many to bog everything down in its short runtime. And I think it at least succeeded with its one or two ideas that it wanted to go through with. Yeah, there were some ideas that didn't work, but at least they didn't get in the way of the main plot. This one just can't focus. It can't decide what it wants to be. And trying so many ideas at the same time just kind of ruins it. Which is probably why, and that is why this story is probably my least favourite. I shall be giving Orphan 55 a 5 out of 10. Completely terrible. There is some redeeming qualities, like the acting is more or less great throughout, and some of the characters are quite fun. Visual effects look pretty decent for the most parts, and the Tranquility Spa stuff sounds interesting. And like I said, these ideas sound good. It's just that if only one or two of them were being played about with, 3 at most, if there wasn't a huge reliance on them, but still well done, and some good character growth for most of our characters, then I think this one could have been a really good episode. But I think it's just an episode. It is still enjoyable. It's not boring. It's just it is a bit sloggy in places, but it's not boring. It's not slow. It's just that there's so much there that it can't decide what to do with itself. And overall, it just feels like a mess. That's what it is. It's a messy episode. It's a fun, messy episode, but it's a messy episode nevertheless. Not to also, the opening scene has a very Series 11-y style humour. I thought we were trying to get away from that style of humour, try and be a bit more Series 12-y. I'm not sure how that works, but I thought Series 12 was trying to be a bit different. But that opening scene felt very Series 11-y, and which is a shame, because I thought some of the comedy in Series 11 wasn't that amazing, apart from with Bradley Walsh. And whilst T.E. has the best moments in the comedy scene in the first scene, and whilst this opening scene does have some great Walsh comedy, the whole scene itself, not so much. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of Ed Heim stories. You can tell by this point, I'm not really a fan of Ed Heim stories. I will give him a third story chance. I'll be okay for him to come back for a third story, but if that third story ends up being like It Takes You Away or worse, this story, then I will be done with Ed Heim after his third story if it goes the same way. But maybe like Steve Thompson, maybe he'll redeem himself with a third story if he's coming back. Then again, with Steve Thompson, that was a co-write with Stephen Moffat. So maybe Chris Chibnall could help Ed Heim out, perhaps. Anyway, so that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for my review of Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, the next episode, which I will be doing on the Universal's channel, and there'll be a link video on this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hang on. I don't know. It's just I don't know what's going on, but I don't know what her motive. And if that wasn't enough, we've also apart from some funny lines from James Buckby and some really good no, scratch that. Not on, and then it turns itself on its head with a twist. Shut up. Turns out it was a sci-fi story. Similarly, one of the other security guy just gets killed off. Jesus Christ, Mandip Gill was perfect in that scene. Well done, Mandip Gill. So, well done, Mandip. So, congratulate. So, high praise for Mandip Gill. Why? The Doctor has used it quite a bit in the classic and New Who's through her reproductory? No. And they're like, we left them there. They'll be fine. How are they going to be fine? Don't want to be more. And the characters need to escape, and the characters need to survive these creatures, and somehow find a way to get them off the planet. Some of the characters are just, but it's not that amazing. I like the practical effects look, and yeah, I just think it's just a so on, and I do really, and I actually want. It's not scary, and it's not scary, and it's not creative. Orphan 55 has quite a few good ideas going for it, but on the whole, just deciding to possibly my least favourite Whittaker. Orphan 55 could be my least favourite Jodie Whittaker story because at least because Tessaranga conundrum, because the Tessaranga, at least the Saranga conundrum, and I'm probably saying that wrong, and I'm probably done, and didn't have too many. He actually managed to do what it needed to do relatively well. I say relatively well. It didn't do it perfectly. Yeah, there were some ideas that weren't really that good and didn't work really well, but it's enjoyable, possibly. But then again, maybe like Steve Thompson, maybe he can redeem himself after a third story, with a third story, I should say. But maybe we like. It's going to be a hell of a video to edit. It's going to be bloopers. I could tell I was slightly smiling when doing that final bit before I even laughed.